Evening. It is 5 o'clock. We are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to all those in the audience and anyone that is on television with us to the Indian River County Hospital District regular monthly meeting. We will begin the meeting with the invocation from Reverend Richard Murphy from Holy Cross Catholic Church.
Thank you and good evening to everyone. God bless the people involved here with the hospital district. I know you give a lot of your time, a lot of your effort, a lot of your talent. And you're dealing with some very vulnerable, some very needy, and some very wanting people. So it's a big task, a responsible one. And needless to say, when we get into responsible tasks, we have to turn to God and ask Him to help us. So He may bless each and every one of you this evening, bless the great work that you're doing, and may you be successful in doing it. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May He look upon you with kindness and give you His peace. So may Almighty God bless you, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, descend upon you and be with you always. So God bless you. I leave it up to you now to continue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father.
We appreciate it. Michael? Begin with the consent agenda. I'd like a motion for the approval of the chairman's meeting minutes dated October 17th, the regular monthly meeting minutes dated October 18th, and a November disbursement of Mr. Jones.
That's $2,009,311.74. You'll find that number slightly different than in your package. I'll talk a little bit more about why in the treasurer's report, but that's what it is right now.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Just a couple things I'd like to go over tonight. We are still on track for a January 1 close with Cleveland Clinic. We're waiting on a few regulatory approvals. Some of them have already come in, which is good news for us, and we don't expect any. It doesn't appear that there'll be anything that will get in the way of that. So that is all good news for us. I wanted to talk a little bit about Anne Marie and Jenny and I attended the United Against Poverty Symposium on November 2nd, which was held at the Richardson Center. There was a lot of community organizations there, very informative about information on Indian River County and the poverty levels in Indian River County, and lots of discussion relative to what we could possibly do. They had a very interesting, some folks from Orlando came in talking about food deserts in America. And a food desert are areas of in a community that don't have access to good grocery stores that have fresh fruit and vegetables in it. And certainly we know that we have some food deserts here in Indian River County. One of the approaches that they took there was to have a mobile food van, which was very interesting, just for fruits and vegetables that came in for people to buy at discount rates, very discount rates. And it was a very interesting concept to us. A lot of people got kind of excited about that. They also talked a lot about a demonstration kitchen in some of the areas where there's food deserts, to be able to give classes in nutrition and classes in how to cook simple foods that are healthy foods rather than fast food and that. And I know that we have, the original intent in Gifford was that we had a demonstration kitchen, so maybe some ideas on how we can kind of regenerate that again would be kind of exciting, I think, to be able to do that. Lots of collaboration. One of the discussions was on obesity and malnutrition and how those go together, which I found to be very interesting, that we often don't put malnutrition with obesity, but you can be malnutrition or obese and still be malnutrition. So that was an interesting also discussion on that. Anne Marie Suriano, you'd be very proud of her. She gave a very good discussion on the hospital district and what it is we do and where we think we're going in the future here. As part of that, Pat Nipper from the mobile unit talked about the mobile health program that we're all familiar with. Andrea Berry talked about barriers to parental care, and Vicki Soule talked about primary care in Indian River County too. So it was very interesting. It was about 4 hours long, and a lot of good ideas came out of that. So I just wanted to kind of give a brief report because a lot of good ideas came out of there from that. So with that, I have nothing else to talk about at this point, and I will turn to our district council. Jennifer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. It's been another busy month as we're working towards a January 1 closing, as our chairwoman just stated. I've continued to work with our retained special transactional counsel with regard to the upcoming Cleveland Clinic transaction and closing. Have assisted and answered trustees' questions along the way as they've arisen through this process, and continued to work with staff as we continue to complete the funded agency agreements that are still in process of being executed for this fiscal year. This past month, I also attended an RFI meeting with providers in the community as well as trustees and district staff to work to come up with information the district needs to restore the needed and desired healthcare services at the Gifford Health Center. I've participated in some phone conversations with Michael Felix and Anne Marie Suriano, our executive director, with regard to the strategic planning that's underway for the district, and have attended a meeting to finalize the proposed amended agreement regarding the return of granted funds by and between the district and the foundation, and I will be presenting this later on tonight on our agenda, along with a formal resolution to approve the first amendment to this agreement. Does anyone have any questions for me? All right, thank you.
Hearing none, we'll move on to the financial statement. Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Well, as you might expect, the district remains in sound financial condition. At the end of October, we had about $4.2 million in the bank. We just spent about half of that. So we have about $2 million left, but we'll start to receive tax revenue soon, and so I think that's plenty, comfortably sufficient until the tax revenues come in to manage our affairs. I mentioned that the amount we spent is slightly different, and I'll try to summarize this, and maybe if you want to ask questions, but Cleveland Clinic, as Chairman Cunningham said, I don't know what to call you, Madam Chairman, is expected to take over January the 1st, and that represents an issue for us. We always have tried to make the hospital whole for all of its expenses, consistent with the indigent care agreement, for taking care of the indigent population that the district supports. Last year, as you know, the hospital had surges in volume of indigent patients, volumes overall, but particularly in indigent, and therefore exceeded our budget. And so in the process of trying to figure out how much, it's not quite as simple as in previous years because we have this factor called reversals. And reversals are basically expenses that are charged by the hospital for caring for indigent. But as more facts come in about the patient, we find out that that patient really wasn't eligible for district reimbursement, and they reverse it. And we kind of true it up at the end of during each fiscal year, and it's been going on for 30 years. It works out very well. However, these reversals are significant. They represent, on average, in the last 4 years, about 17.5% of the total amount of billings that come in for indigent care. With Cleveland Clinic taking over January the 1st, we would like to have a clean slate on January 1 and not go back to Cleveland Clinic in February or March and April, say, hey, you owe us some money. We don't think that's the way to start the relationship. So we got to figure out exactly how to kind of true those costs up. So we're working on it. I'm working with George Amy, the CFO at IRMC, as well as Warren Fuller. And it's kind of a work in progress at the moment. However, what we've decided to do is, at least for, there are two components to this problem in terms of reconciling these potential overpayments. One is from the last fiscal year, because there'll be particularly charges that occurred in June, July, August, September. They might be reversed in January or February or March. And we got to come up with an accurate way to estimate that. The second part is we got October, November, December this year. Before Cleveland Clinic takes over, we're going to continue to operate under the terms of the existing indigent care agreement. And so we've decided that we'll just withhold 17.5% of each of the October, November, December. And so that changed the numbers slightly in your, so specifically, but you might find this interesting if you haven't done the math. The October billings for indigent care from Indian River Medical Center were, in round figures, $766,000. Multiply that times 12, that's a $9 million run rate. So that's a lot more than we've had. But what we decided to do is withhold 17.5% of that in anticipation that on average, they'll reverse 17.5% of that sometime in the future. And so instead of 766, we paid them 634. And so we'll hold that. And then George and Warren and the management of Indian River Medical Center and I, with your advice and counsel, will try to true this up before January the 1st. So on January the 1st, Cleveland Clinic starts off with a clean slate. So I hope that's not too boring an explanation, but that's the reason. Beyond that, I think we're in good shape, and that's my report, unless there are questions.
What was the new number again?
Which number?
The disbursement?
This month?
Yeah.
$2,009,311.74.
Thank you.
Typically, when do funds start coming in?
About now.
About now?
Yeah, Anne Marie will know better than I do. I've only been here 4 years. She's been here forever. One of these Anne Marie's has.
Forever? Really?
Well, long enough to have a lot more history
than
than I do.
black,
but
Freddie Wolfork will say when my hair was black.
the end of November, they start coming in.
We have received, I've received 3 notifications of taxes that have come in so far in November. So we receive a significant amount November, December, January. So almost close to the $14 million that we assess all comes in those first 3 months of the fiscal year. So we've probably received a quarter of that already.
Any other questions? Okay, Anne Marie, sorry on.
Okay. A couple of things this morning. We've already talked about the United Against Poverty Symposium, which was really a successful event, and I hope that they can continue to keep doing that. It is an annual event, and this was I think the 5th annual, so I think it was really well received for our community. We are on the downhill slide of finishing up the Human Services Building, so you won't have to hear me talk about that anymore. And Anne Marie McChrystal, it's coming. We're about 30 days out. This week they've finished the drywall and the painting. This weekend they're going to install the new front doors of the building. They have finished all of the outside work, the bathroom partitions, tile, vanities will be installed over the next week or so. The floor tile will start probably the end of next week, and so we are 30 days. They assure me we are 30 days out, so or less, to being finished with that project. So, and we are on budget, so everything is going well over there. Okay. The Senior Resource Association, as part of their transportation efforts. They have been installing bicycle repair stations and bike racks. Next,
Correction to that.
sorry.
It's not me who's doing that.
Oh.
actually. It's the bike, the group that does the bike.
Oh, you
program.
called me about it.
So
I thought
they
it was
are-
the transportation
Yeah,
department.
but
Okay.
we were in collaboration with them.
With them,
How's
okay.
that?
Well, in that collaboration, they have come to me and asked if they could install that bike repair station and a new bike rack next to the pavilion, if that's what you call it, at the bus stop, bus shelter at the Gifford Health Center. And so I thought that was would be a great addition over there. Many of the people, I think, that use the Gifford Health Center ride their bicycles there. So that would be a bike repair station there and the bike rack. So we've installed a pad there to assist for them to install that, and the pad is being poured tomorrow, and so I would assume soon after that they'll put that station in there. But I thought that would be a welcome addition for the center out there. I have been continuing my work with Michael Felix for the strategic planning. We've talked to a lot of really good community leaders this week, getting a lot of good information, and so we are on track to finish up that work through January, and we'll have a report for you February. I think unless there are other things, some others we'll talk about later in the meeting today. So if there are any questions, be happy to take those.
Okay. Hearing no questions, we'll move on to the monthly report. So IRMC, you're going to talk about interventional neurology and the new stroke program? Who's talking?
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Todd Bibbins, Vice President of Operations at Indian River Medical Center. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the history of the stroke program at the hospital and the interventional neuro program that is coming to us, or actually in place now and moving forward. So I have a few slides. Interventional neurology program of stroke. Stroke is the 5th leading cause of death in Indian River County, and that's been identified by the Community Health Initiative. So that was work done here. The disability is devastating. Of course, death is part of the possible outcome, but also disability is a very real possibility that could affect you for the rest of your life. So it's very important that we manage that as effectively as we can. Indian River Medical Center is an award-winning stroke center, Gold Plus accreditation. That's 15 different achievement and quality indicators that we've met and exceeded the goals in. So we're very proud of that, and we're on track for that again this year. In addition, there's an honor roll that goes along with that, and with the addition of the interventional neurologists, our program has improved, and we feel like we have a good opportunity to meet that as well. Patient volume for FY16, you'll see there on the screen. We had 536 exams, stroke alerts, 334 stroke admissions, and then 207 TIAs, transischemic events or attacks. So it's a pretty busy service line for us. Current state, and as we move forward, there's 2 different areas that we've used previously for those more interventional comprehensive stroke programs, one being Holmes Regional Medical Center to the north, and then Longwood to the south. You can see it's a fair distance, and as you'll hear from one of our physicians, interventional neurologist, that time is brain, so it's important that we have that service in the community so that we can take care of our patients in a very timely manner. In addition, Longwood is in a locums situation with their physicians, so again, not 100% all the time, not the quality care that you would get here when you had full-time neurologists, interventional neurologists on staff. Holmes Regional, again, also is an on-again, off-again program, so you can't rely on them 100% for service as well. So again, a lot of opportunity to help not just the community, but the surrounding communities as well. Kind of a history of how we've gotten to where we are today. January 2018, banned positive stroke patients. Because of patient safety, we realized we couldn't provide the optimal service. At that time, we were having those patients go directly to Longwood to get the optimal care, which happened to be from the physicians that we have on staff now here. So by chance, in April 15 of this year, the Aruba group, which consists of the physicians that we have, resigned from Longwood. That was an excellent opportunity for us to bring those physicians here. And fortunately, through fairly quick conversations, which Rick Van Lith helped facilitate significantly, we were able to bring those physicians here. So April 23rd, the hospital board approved interventional neurostroke program and to go for capital funding for that system service. May 23rd, Aruba signs the contract with Indian River Medical Center for the interventional neurology program. So May 23rd, everything starts flying, where order sets have to be done, areas have to be identified, because again, we don't have a dedicated biplane area or imaging area for this service. We do have equipment that can service it, but there's 3 different locations and we have to work through another service lines for that. It can do thrombectomies, but again, some of the other services these gentlemen are prepared to do, we cannot accomplish with what we have at the hospital currently. So again, we had a lot of paperwork done, a lot of staff. It was a whole hospital effort. All the teams were involved, nursing, imaging, physicians. It was a very large group working through a lot of things in a very quick fashion. On July 21st, we opened the interventional neuro, potentially more thrombectomy ready, we'll call it, for the hospital. We've had 11 successful cases from the standpoint of retrieving clots, and it was a very robust start from the beginning. As you can see, the 23rd we started the program, the 24th we had our first thrombectomy. So again, with the equipment we have, it's not a challenge from a technology standpoint, but from a scheduling standpoint and from working around other service lines. So here's our physicians. I think many of you have seen them, met them, had an opportunity to hear them. Dr. Shade, Akram Shade is on the left, from my left going to the middle. He's not here today, but Dr. Vikas Gupta is in the audience, and so is Dr. Eamon Gaith. So these are highly trained interventional neurologists. I believe there's only 800 in the country, and we have 3.
Awesome.
So it's very impressive, and it allows us to have that 24/7 coverage that we need to service our community. So that being said, what I'd like to do is introduce Dr. Eamon Gaith, and he will continue the presentation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Todd. Hey, how did you click on the?
Yep, on the right. There you go.
All right. And is there a light on this thing?
Right there. I don't know about
Oh, it doesn't, okay. All right, that's okay. So first of all, let me thank you all for allowing me the chance to speak in front of you all, and to the audience as well as people watching this at home. I wanted to jump right into cases with you, but first we just want to lay a little bit of groundwork. And why is this important? Why is addressing stroke something that we take very seriously? When you look at a typical ischemic stroke, so basically a stroke where a blood clot is stopping flow to the part of the brain, until that blood flow is restored, the brain is losing approximately 2 million neurons, about 14 billion synapses, those are the connections between the neurons, almost 7.5 miles of myelin fiber, and the myelin fiber, if you think about a cable, it's the covering of that cable. It's very important to keep the neurons firing in the direction they need to go. And this is happening every minute. And so it's really the only disease in all of medicine where minutes make a difference. So 5 minutes is enough time for a person to lose the ability to speak or understand, right? 5 minutes is enough time for a person to lose the ability to swallow. 5 minutes is enough time to lose the memory of a grandchild. So I want to jump, like I said, right into cases. This is our first case. This was a case of a 52-year-old gentleman who had a history of high cholesterol. He was coughing for about 2 weeks, and he presented with a large stroke. His last known well time, which is one of the markers we use to gauge the, whether or not we can treat a patient, his last known well time was about 4.5 hours before he came to our institution. As soon as he reached, we received, we got certain images. One of those was a CT perfusion scan, and this is scanning technology that really is forward-thinking. And we were very pleasantly surprised, myself and Dr. Gupta and Dr. Shade, to find out that Indian River had already installed this technology into their hospital even before we got there, okay? Perfusion imaging, its job is to try to tease out what part of the brain has already been permanently affected versus what part of the brain has been affected but is still alive and potentially savable. And what I want you to notice here, you see 3 pictures there. You see that area there. On the right and the left, you see how that color is different, but in the center, it looks the same. And what that means is, although that tissue is slowly dying, it's not dead yet, and that patient is savable. So we took this patient directly to angio, and it's a little hard to understand this, but there's my catheter. You kind of see it at the base there, and you see how the artery kind of comes up and stops abruptly. Can you all make out that shadow there, that white shadow right near the tip where it's closed? That's the actual clot. It's sitting in the vessel. And to try to, give you a little bit more perspective here, I put the picture of the gentleman behind it to show you where in the brain this is, or where in the head this is. The cartoon rendition on the right is the normal anatomy of that patient. And the actual projected normal path of blood flow should be that red outline there. That's what the artery should look like. And there's where the clot is sitting. It's sitting right there. And so, again, this is on the left side is the digital subtraction image. On the right side is the actual image. And you see, it's hard to see, but you see how there's 3 dots distal, and then there's a little mesh there, and then 3 dots proximal and a solid line. That's actually the device that we use. One of the devices, it's one of the newer technologies that's out there that has really revolutionized stroke. And it's actually that device there, and this one happens to be the Solitaire device, and essentially we go through the clot, we deploy that device, we let it infuse into the clot, and I bring up a proximal suction catheter, and we take the whole thing out all as one unit. Okay, that's the before, and this is immediately after I took the clot out. And you can see the reestablishment of flow there. And that's the actual clot. It's amazing to me how something this small can have such a profound effect on someone's life. Okay, and that's the device.
You make this look very easy.
Well,
Absolutely amazing. Yeah, good for you.
Thank you. Now, the following morning, that patient had dramatically improved. He was left with a slight facial droop and mild right arm weakness. When he first came in, he had complete paralysis of his right face and right arm. He had a forced gaze deviation where his eyes were fixed in one direction and could not move, which all resolved. And he was unable to speak or understand. He had complete global aphasia, okay? All of that had resolved. I saw him a month later in clinic, and he had returned completely to normal. Without this is a death sentence, without this procedure. The next case actually happened here at Indian River. It's one of our first cases. And this was an 88-year-old woman who is the caregiver for her husband. She had a history of an irregular heartbeat, atrial fibrillation, but was not really taking any medication for it. Typically, we treat that with a blood thinner. And I wanted to break down the timeline to show you, because I know Todd kind of alluded to it, but a lot of what we did, we signed on May 23rd, but we really didn't start doing clinical work until July. And the reason for that is because to effectively treat stroke, it's a village approach. You have to have buy-in from all the different service lines in the hospital, which includes the emergency department, anesthesia, internal medicine, neurosurgery, as well as radiology and interventional, as well as your neurologist. Typically, what was happening before is that a patient would come in, they'd have to get evaluated in the ED, and then had to go to CT, come back, a radiologist would have to read it, a call would have to go out to a neurologist. All of that wastes time, okay? So our focus was geared on redoing the order sets and streamlining the process to make it a very, very smooth transition to really shave as much time off as possible. And this is kind of reflected in this case. Now, in this case here, we had applied all of the protocols that we had instituted. So she was identified at 10:40 in the morning. At 10:50, EMS arrived at her residence. Kudos to them for getting there so quickly. At 10:54, we received via the Track EMS. Vikas has it on his phone, if you want to show him the phone there, right? We get it on that phone. And what that is actually is an app where the EMS driver can send us real-time information. They can send us HIPAA-protected videos of what's going on with the patient. So we know that they're coming even before they reach us, okay? And that happened at 10:54. 11:05, she arrived at the emergency department. Her NIH stroke scale, which is a scale that we use to gauge how bad someone's stroke is. The higher the scale, the worse off. So a normal patient has an NIH stroke scale of 0. NIH stroke scale of 21 is a huge stroke. And she presented with left arm and left face paralysis. My partner, Dr. Shade, and the team was notified at 11:07 that she was actually in-house. At 11:10, the whole team, and what we've done is basically brought a whole team to meet the patients in CT so that we can make a series of very rapid decisions. So that's including the doctor, the nurse practitioner, the hospitalist, the neuro ICU nurse, and the ER stroke team all met the patient in CT. At 11:30, she got the CT and CTA, and it was seen that she had a clot. Our team was activated at 11:31. We gave her the clot-busting medication at 11:34. So the door to TPA time was 33 minutes, which is amazing, believe me, okay? And at 11:40, her blood pressure started to elevate because of the natural history of the stroke she was having, so we contacted our anesthesia colleagues. And this is the actual scan. So on the left side, you see that bright dot there? The arrow's kind of pointing to it. That's where the blood clot is. When you look at the right side, that's the imaging where we give you contrast to look at the vessels. And you see how where the arrow is, there's no flow in that whole hemisphere of the brain because of that blood clot. So 11:55, we put a tube down. Anesthesia helped us to put a tube down, and the procedure started at 12:28 after the patient was prepped and ready. We accessed the clot at 12:30. After 2 passes, 12:58, she had complete restoration of blood flow. And this is the before. And you see how the artery kind of comes up and it stops. You guys see those squiggly lines all the way at the end? Mm-hmm. Those are actually dural branches in the dura, the covering of the brain, that are now trying to open up to frantically supply the brain because the brain is dying. Okay? And that's the before, and that's after he took the clot out. Complete restoration of flow. And notice those squiggly lines are now gone because they don't need to work anymore because the blood flow is open. At 4:30 that night, we took the tube out. She had improved movement and strength of her extremities. She had improved her ability to move her eyes. Her eyes were fixed and paralyzed in one direction, and that had gotten better. The fine motor deficits in her left hand still remained, and she had mild left facial droop and a little bit of slurring of her words. And then November 6th, she voted. Okay. November 8th, her mental ability came back to baseline. Her speech was back to normal. She had a residual small, fine left motor deficit, and her facial droop has resolved. And she's now able to go back and take care of her husband, which is our goal, to get people back to their functional baseline. Stroke is not a disease where a person is sick for many, many years. They're normal. And then all of a sudden they're devastated, and then we have a very short time to bring them back to normal, and if we drop that ball, they remain devastated. And I'm going to turn it over to Rick, but I just want to take a chance, because this is televised, just to get this mnemonic out there to people, because what we want to do always is increase stroke awareness. I want people to remember the mnemonic FAST, F-A-S-T, okay? If a person's face is droopy, if their arm is weak, if their speech is garbled or changed or jumbled or incomprehensible in any way, it's time to call 911. Don't waste time. It's better safe than sorry, okay? If you don't get to us in time, there's not much we can do for you. And with that, I thank you very much for listening. I'll turn it over to Rick here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Geez, how do you follow that?
Mm-hmm.
So they started on May 23rd, and we pulled the trigger and did our first, opened up for business. So much to say, but on July 23rd, and right away we had services. We spent a lot of time on process and defining the process and the who does what's for now. And then we came up with the idealized state. So we have redundancy with equipment, and everybody knows where they're supposed to be, and it's physically set up to match the process. So I'm going to spend just a few seconds talking about this. Some of you are very familiar with the facility, some, right, Emery, and some are not. But what we've done is we've got a racetrack that you hit the door with the ambulance. First thing you have to do is get a CT. So the CT that Dr. Gaith was speaking to is on the left-hand side. It's the first new box. There's a new CT that was installed in March that can identify all the perfusion issues. The very first or second week, we actually had 2 strokes at the very same time in the building. Time is brain. We're going to have 2 is what we're proposing, so we have redundancy and we'll be able to move very quickly to identify the issues. The irregular shape that I'll go into a little detail is where the biplane goes, the machine that actually creates the vision, the view that you saw and pulls out the clot. That's in an area that used to be the old ER. It's just past the pavilion. Hasn't been the old ER in many, many years, but we're going to take that area and work within the box we have, and happily, very coincidentally, this racetrack was there. It was just a matter of determining where things should go, and we're within the same box. In the critical care unit, it's the old CCA unit, and we're taking 4 beds and designating and just equipping that with the neuro equipment that is needed to care for. This is what's happened in the first, 100 and some days. We were transferring patients out, and this doesn't include, so they come to the ER, we transfer them down to Longwood, and time is brain. This doesn't include what was going on with patients that were going directly down to Longwood, which is what we were originally setting up when we went into this, is how can we get them down there quickly, do the CTA, those that can benefit get down there quickly. Well, you can see that there are still a couple patients being transferred out, but it's dramatically increased. And the stroke alerts have increased too. And that's because we're getting patients coming from other areas. And I have to commend the EMS. Both Indian River County and Indian River Shores have really worked well with us to develop the VAN criteria to communicate with the ER doctors and the interventional docs. Here's the piece of equipment. We spend time working with the interventional neurologist. We've picked a Philips biplane. This might look familiar to those of you that have been in the endoscopy suite. It's pretty close to the same design. It's very flexible, and that's been the key with the design. We're coming up with something that can adapt and grow to whatever the community can throw at it, basically. Here's this interventional suite. This is where the old ER is, a very simple layout. The blue is where the biplane goes, which is basically on the hallway, leaving the pavilion, if you will. And above it, just to the right of the arrow on the left, is going to be a shelled-in area should we need to expand and have another biplane. The holding area is on the pre- and post-procedure unit. There's an 8-bed unit. We're going to be flexible enough that it can be used not only for stroke and interventional neurology, but other services. And that's expandable too into an area that's immediately adjacent. We're not doing that right away. We're setting ourselves up for the immediate needs. This is the overall budget. That's the interventional neurology suite, the holding area that I described, the CT scanner that gives us redundancy, the ability to do the CTA, CTP, and we had to relocate a few offices, as well as we set up a stroke clinic that the interventional neurologists have in the Health and Wellness Center, where they'll be seeing patients as they recover. So with that, I will stop. I went as quickly as possible. And if any of you have questions, I'd be happy to let any one of us entertain them.
I'm curious, how long does somebody stay then once they've gone through one of these procedures?
Well, that depends on the disease itself. It depends on when they reached us. Obviously, success stories usually go home the next day. Sometimes, unfortunately, despite best efforts, they still continue a stroke. Everyone is different because of the collateral circulation of the brain. That's why to maximize your best potential to make a good outcome, you have to reach the hospital as soon as safely possible. But what we have noticed that when we talk about the blockages, the large vessel occlusions, on average, those patients without a procedure are going to sit in the hospital for at least 2 weeks and sometimes up to a month. With the procedure, the chance of that happening has been reduced per the current data, the last 4 trials that were published. The chance of that happening has been reduced by about 60%.
Wow. I mean, that's
Yeah.
big too.
It is. So, when we talk about literature, this is a home run by all definitions. It's some of the strongest literature in medicine. If you know about the cardiac heart catheterizations when someone's having a stroke. We have a value called number needed to treat. What that means is you need to treat an N number of patients in order to affect change in one patient. The number needed to treat in cardiology is 1 in 16. So for every 16 that you treat, you're going to save the life of the 17th person. The number needed to treat with the new neurology data is 1 in 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Wow.
So these people, if treated appropriately in the time frame, could probably be discharged to home with follow-up PT if they needed, rather than have to go to any kind of a long-term rehab facility.
Right.
So that's a great purpose.
Correct.
Hey, Rick, the total amount, 10.44, has this been totally invested?
So,
At this
so
point?
I'm glad you brought that up because I left things
There's
out
a raise
in
on
my haste. So the hospital board wanted to get this program up and running. So we used the equipment we had the CT scanner, and off we go, and then we designed it. The foundation board is very anxious to support this program. A couple of you were actually at one of the foundation events that we just had. The timeline on this program from the time we get to go all the way with the things that I've described is about 7 months from the time we start construction. The foundation is very active in trying to get funding at this point. And, the argument we have is such a compelling one. I mean, time is brain. We all know somebody that's been affected by stroke, and this will really make a difference for the folks in our community.
So you're looking for $5.5 million, or the foundation is? to
No, the
fund it?
foundation's 10.44.
10.4. Oh, excuse me. Okay. The equipment alone is 5.5.
Correct.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to chip in the 5 million.
Yeah, right. But it just seems
Talking
like,
later, Anne Marie.
as you said, very compelling
Absolutely.
to the people in the community.
I'm assuming all of this has been vetted through Cleveland Clinic as well, so that they are also supportive and working with you on it to some extent?
They're well aware.
Okay.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm not going to. So the Hub Hospital in Weston, Cleveland Clinic's Hub Hospital, actually sent their neuroscience team to us, and we're very impressed. And I think what they're going to do is emulate our structure moving down the line.
Great.
Wonderful.
And when we talk
Great
about
news.
when we talk about neurointerventionalists, especially in the country, there's 800. In the Treasure Coast, that catchment area of about 1.5 million, there's only 4 people, and now 3 of them are Indian River.
We are
We're very
glad to
excited
have
that
you.
you're on board.
We are glad to have you here.
Glad to have you's right.
I'm just curious, as you decided whether to come to Indian River or not, did the fact that Cleveland Clinic's coming here have any effect on that decision?
All right. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So our focus has always been on 3 things: teaching, education, research, and patient care. Okay.
That sounds like they're.
Exactly, and it really is. It was, and so when we heard that Cleveland Clinic was coming, it was very exciting for us because, and actually the choosing of the Philips biplane is specifically for that reason, because there's trials that are run out of Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland that, not to bore you with the details, but basically there's certain perfusion images that we can do in angio to improve what those brain structures look like, that we are very excited to enroll in. And so that has always been our mission. And frankly, it's one of the reasons why we had to make a decision to leave Lawnwood. And that decision was made before we talked with Indian River. And that really mirrored the Cleveland Clinic philosophy. So
And you had a lot of confidence that we were actually going to bring in Cleveland Clinic.
Well, I kind of did. Well, because
The timing is.
well, I'll tell you, honestly, the reason I say that is because I've always felt that, especially on, I didn't have access to talking to you all, but especially with talking with the administration, they've always been a forward-thinking administration. They're always thinking ahead of and anticipating what their community needed. Case in point, the CT scanner. Without an interventional program, you technically don't need that technology there. But they were always thinking forwardly as how are we going to serve this community, and that fit exactly what we were looking for. We will build a phenomenal program, but without your support, without administrative support, it just doesn't work. It takes a village, it really does.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome
Thank you
to our
very much.
community.
Right.
Study these faces, okay? We want you there. Thank you all so much.
I'd just like to make a comment before Mr. Van Lith retires and Mrs. Davis. I want to thank you very much for finally reaching a successful conclusion with the veterans groups. There's been a long, ongoing discussion over billing problems within the hospital and the VA with veterans that come to services. And this goes back many years, and it's been frustrating for me and for other people. I know Vincent has been working with you very heavily on that. And I'm just so happy that you've reached a successful conclusion, and the veterans in this community will be getting better service at the hospital and with a more cooperative view toward the VA and the financing. And I want to thank you for that effort. I know you weren't going to say anything, but it's important that you get credit for what you do.
Rick, we didn't know you were retiring.
Oh, Mrs. Davis is hiding behind Rick.
Oh, okay. Yes, thank you for all you do. This was outstanding.
It was a multi-year dispute going on.
That's great. Any other comments to them? Thank you so much for taking your time to come in tonight to go through that with us. We appreciate it. We're going to move on to the funded agencies, and I believe Mike Swan is here from the Public Guardianship Program. And Morgan, hello. Hello again.
Before I start, as a member of the public, that was amazingly thorough, and also I'm very queasy now, and now I know I went to law school. So, thank you, doctors. Madam Chairman Cunningham and members of the district board, my name is Mike Swan, and I'm currently the chair of the Public Guardian of Indian River County. It's a volunteer board, and tonight I'm joined by Morgan Libby, who's our executive director, who gives her heart and soul to our cause. We've been before you before, but just briefly, the Public Guardian is appointed by the court for individuals in our community who have no family and who have no assets and no one to step forward to take care of them. We are appointed by the court for incapacitated individuals. We're supervised by the court. We're supervised by the court auditors, and also the state of Florida supervises our activities and our budget. We presently have 16 cases. Your assistance has allowed us to grow to that point. We get referrals from the court system. We get referrals from the hospital, from BHC, and from members of the public who see something and say, hey, that person is either being exploited or can't take care of themselves, or they're in the hospital and there's nobody there to make discharge plans for them and they just linger there. So I think this board has seen the benefit of having a program that they can support. The court system is obviously very happy to have us. When we started, we were one of only 5 counties that had a public guardian. Governor Scott made it a mission of his 4 years ago to have all 67 counties be under the auspices of his office and to have a funded public guardian. So it's something that's true and dear to my heart. Morgan is going to give you a little bit more background on the program, and we're here for any questions. And again, thank you for your support. It's been vital to our program. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us. I'm just gonna, okay. So as Mike discussed, we are a volunteer board, and I became the executive director in 2014, and I also serve as one of the 2 guardians in our program. I'm gonna give you our quarterly update since that's what we're here for, but in November 1st, we had 14 active cases. 2 are in process, and as of 12:45 today, that's now 3 in process. to be appointed under our program for us to serve as guardian. In the first quarter of our fiscal year, 3 cases were discharged from guardianship due to their passing away. So our program sometimes has rapid turnover rates and sometimes not so much. In the first quarter of this fiscal year, we had 2 cases that were intakes from Indian River Medical Center and Behavioral Health Center. They had been there for longer than 1 month of an inpatient stay with no discharge plan possible. Within 30 days, actually within about a week, both were placed in facilities, a skilled nursing facility and a group home. The first case that we had received was a 26-year-old female who was developmentally delayed. She had a history of family exploitation, and she was a patient at the Behavioral Health Center. Not only did she require placement, she required assistance with her government benefits applications and intake with APD so that she could receive community services in addition to the group home. She's now thriving and attending the day program at ARC. She's receiving her food stamps to help defray the cost of her meals, and also Social Security disability benefits to pay for her room and board. So she's utilizing the systems, and she is a patient at Treasure Coast Community Health. So she is, we're doing everything preventatively that we can to keep her healthy. The second was a gentleman who was 65. He had hospitalized due to a traumatic fall. He had a history of stroke. And he required placement in a skilled nursing facility and a Medicaid application to defray those costs, both of which were completed upon appointment, and he is receiving services in the facility, actually out of county now, but receiving those services. Of the 14 active cases that we did have in that first quarter, 7 were seen by primary care physicians in the community. The rest are typically seen in the facilities by the physicians that round there. So about 24 total appointments took place for those 7 clients, 100% success rate in implementing those care plans that the physicians required. And we only had 1 hospitalization, and with that hospitalization, we had a discharge plan in place within the first 24 hours, and she was discharged within 72 hours. So we were able to immediately work with the discharge planners, the physicians, and the team to ensure that everything was, going to be followed through. In September, we had our annual monitoring visit conducted by the state of Florida. They come in, they review our files for necessary documentation, they ensure that we are complying with all Florida statutes, and in addition, they go and see randomly selected clients, and they interview them and the facilities that they're living in or with family members. It was determined that we exceeded best practices again, and that we were exceeding the Florida statute requirements of visitation, and that's big kudos to Terry Bell, our case manager, who's here tonight. She volunteers a lot of her time as well, so without her, we couldn't do it. Unfortunately, I didn't have the written documentation to provide to you tonight. I will be happy to send it on to you all. They had communicated with me by phone that this wasn't complete yet, but they were able to provide me with verbal results. Our continued obstacles, I think, are shared by everybody. It's housing in this community is very difficult, both on a facility level and group homes. But we manage that by working with other adjacent counties, which we are allowed to do under Florida statute. We are allowed to relocate someone to a county that is adjacent to Indian River, and we do that when necessary. We also obviously have to manage our wait list as it comes up, as it ebbs and flows, and because of our smaller staff, it is difficult to manage that, but without this funding that you all provide, it wouldn't be possible to be managing soon to be 17 cases, and I'm sure 18 before too long. So we are extremely grateful to you all. As Mike said, we give our heart and soul, and I feel like that's something that we do every day, and I appreciate you all and your support. Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Does anybody have any questions?
Escape.
I guess not. Thank you.
What was the, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I can't remember, the maximum number of cases that you can take?
It used to be 12, but with the generosity and the funding from you all, we can take upwards of 18.
Okay.
that can be a little daunting, but we could do it.
You're almost there.
We're almost there. I have a hard time saying no. So, yeah. But we would expect that with more community knowledge of this, that waiting list could grow tremendously.
Do you have a wait list currently?
We have 3 on the wait list, but I would expect there could be a lot more.
Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
service.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Michael. You had a big ride
Yes,
coming up.
thanks for driving up
Yeah,
from Miami
thank
for
you.
Oh
this.
my goodness, he was in my,
Appreciate it. He was, yes, he was.
He arrived
he's
safe.
doing the recount.
We did have, in a written report from New Horizons, it's in your packet in there to be reviewed. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer to talk about the resolution for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. We have, as we kind of highlighted this morning at our morning meeting, in your packet is an outline of the agreement regarding return of granted funds and the First Amendment to the agreement regarding return of granted funds, and a summary of kind of where we were and where we're going with this, as well as a copy of each agreement, and you were each provided previously with a copy of the proposed resolution to adopt the First Amendment to the agreement. As I believe most of you know, but we'll go through this a little bit for the public. The original agreement was entered into on December 20th of 2007 between the district and the foundation. The agreement itself governs grants made by the foundation to the medical center after December 20th of 07 and provides that the grants will be subject to the terms of the agreement, and provides that all funds granted by the foundation be used for improvement or replacement of medical center facilities. All funds granted by the foundation used for the purchase, acquisition, or construction of capital improvements must be placed in a depreciation account with a 30-year useful life and be depreciated over that life on a straight line basis. And really for the district, it was important that if the district were to enter into a transaction that involves the sale of all or substantially all of the medical center facilities unless approved in writing by the foundation, the district would have a repayment obligation in the amount of the undepreciated amount of funds granted by the foundation. So under the new agreement, the First Amendment to the agreement, it will take effect upon the closing of the member substitution agreement, so it would be January 1, assuming we close on January 1 of 2019. And all funds granted by the foundation to the medical center on or after that date will not be subject to the agreement. Any funds granted prior to that date, of course, would be subject to the requirements in the agreement. Under the amendment, the district is not bound to repay future granted funds by the foundation to the medical center on or after the date of closing, and the foundation will not claim that the amended and restated lease agreement with the medical center is a sale which obligates the district's repayment obligation. In addition, the foundation will not claim that a sale of the medical center facilities to Medical Center while Cleveland Clinic Foundation or its affiliates as the member of the medical center would obligate the district to the repayment obligation. So the amendment is all surrounding the repayment obligation and that liability out there for the district. That's really the reason for it. And we did spend quite a bit of time working on this, negotiating this with the foundation, their chair and their executive director and their attorney, as well as myself, our transactional counsel, and our board chair as our representative, and then have brought this back to the trustees. Everyone is in agreement at this time to enter into the amendment, and I think it is a great improvement for the position of the district going forward with this transaction with Cleveland Clinic. So I would ask if anyone has any questions, and if no questions, we'd ask for approval of the First Amendment and then adoption of that resolution.
Any questions relative to the resolution or the amendment?
And we will attach it to the minutes. It's quite long, so I don't want to have to read it in unless anyone has an objection to that.
No, please.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Oh, I need a motion to approve, I'm sorry. It's been a long day.
Moved.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. The resolution is adopted, and we will go ahead and get the documents executed after the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, new business. Tony Brown. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Anthony Brown. Most of you have met me as a consultant for the health department as well as the Gifford Health Clinic Committee. but I'm here tonight as the president of the local branch of the Indian River County branch of the NAACP. I'm also area director, which I oversee several presidents and other branches. My concerns for tonight are the Gifford assessment. I emailed a letter in reference to my concerns in regard to it. The major concern is the who, the what, and why that led to the use of the zip code instead of the census tract. The zip code 32967 is not relative to the Gifford community. It encompasses Vero Lake Estates. It encompasses areas that are not considered to be Gifford proper. Gifford proper has, under the census tract, has 61.8% African American. The zip code is approximately 18%. These are numbers, and I was very much concerned. I don't know if it was a mistake, oversight, or people just didn't know that these two differ vastly. Because when you do this zip code, how can you say this is a Gifford survey when it encompasses Vero Lake Estates? How can you say it's a Gifford survey when it covers on the east side of US 1, and the only community that has any substantial amount of African Americans is Pinnacle Groves? Also, there are deep deficiencies between the African American population, as I said earlier. My opinion is the assessment due to these numbers is very much flawed, and it does not give a true understanding of the medical needs and health risks associated with the African American population of the Gifford community. I feel that some of us who have been attempting to work with and collaborate and to be a true and relative partner should have been involved. If you didn't know, what is Gifford? Who is Gifford? Somebody should have asked, okay, Freddie, myself, and as you see, I brought several of my community partners here tonight. We were readily available to say, if you want a true number to do your assessment, talk to us and we'll tell you. Even if you go with the taxing district for Gifford, there are 3 different Giffords. And some of you may not know this, but they have 3 different Giffords when it comes to taxing purposes, as well as looking at the zip code versus the census tract. And I would like to know, with you knowing this, how can this assessment be used to facilitate and understand the medical and health needs of our community? It leaves me questioning, how can we move forward with a flawed assessment? The other thing is, our community is deeply troubled about the RPI, the RFP and the RFI. We have had a strong marriage in the Gifford Community Health Department with the Gifford Clinic. And we did not ask for a divorce. You know, we are very much comfortable. The health department, it's your decision because it's your building. But I think Beverly O'Neill, and sitting in the audience is Mr. Victor Hart Sr., who put his blood, sweat, and tears. He's 87 years old, and as he embark upon the sunset, it's being brought to his attention that this entity may possibly change when he did all of this footwork, groundwork, going to Washington, D.C., doing all these other things to make this happen for a vulnerable community such as ours, to find out it is in disarray and the possibility of changes. We understand that several years ago there was a great financial crisis with the health center, but that was not due to us or anybody else. It was due to the government and the recession and other things. We feel that adequate funding, the old mission with new innovative programs, a sincere understanding of your clientele, patience, and a willingness to truly listen and hear what the community is saying can benefit us all. You cannot help me if you don't know me, understand me, or respect me. Please understand that understand the mission that you are embarking on didn't occur overnight, saying that where we are as the health situation in the Gifford community did not happen overnight. And it's not something that you did, but it's a lifetime of neglect, misunderstanding, and no understanding of the needs of an impoverished, under-resourced, vulnerable community. And now, whatever we do, it cannot be fixed overnight. It's going to take a real collaboration where all parties sitting at the table can have a true say-so in how we move forward. It brings to mind when I became a consultant with the health department, one of the reasons I was intrigued was PACE, PACE-EH. It's Protocol for Assessing Community Excellence in Environmental Health. This process says, hey, Gifford, what do you need? Not Gifford, this is what we're going to do. Because understanding us, understanding our needs, that you're not going to, Rome wasn't built in a day, you're not going to fix these problems. I hear people say a business plan, a matrix, a timeline. When you're dealing with community health, all of that is irrelevant. It's understanding that these problems are diverse. I was understanding that some of you don't even know the community. So here we are, the Tony Browns, the Freddie Wolfhawks, the Joe Idlets, the Victor Hart Seniors, other people who are here tonight saying, use us. But first, understand our needs. Understand that you have to have a true understanding of our problems. You have to come out of your perspective, get into ours, and understand that our needs are sincere. We want to help. But first and foremost, ask us. We don't want a divorce. We think that community health is a unique thing. You cannot look at it from a profit margin. And thank you for all you've done previously, but under this new era, understand that we're embarking on something that none of us know, none of us have done before, none of us understand, but you have some foot soldiers who are out there willing to help you make this success. And with that, I say thank you. And I have my health chair, Ms. Alma Miller. We report. Not only do I have to report to the state, I report to the region and the National Association for the NAACP. As a matter of fact, the president of the state of Florida is also the health chair for the national organization. So what we do here is not just in Indian River County. I have to file reports to move up the chain, and hopefully this collaboration can be something successful. But I ask you, hear us. Don't just listen, but hear what we have to say and understand we are deeply embedded in our community and we truly care. With that, unless you have any questions, I thank you.
Tony, maybe I could make a comment here.
Yes, sir.
The idea that because I'm not sure everybody understands that might be watching on TV and knows the Gifford Health Center was created in 2003 principally by this district.
Mm-hmm.
And it was leased to the health department to manage and provide services to the residents of Gifford. Over the year, and it had a pretty full array of services that was available, including pediatric care, but also including adult care and a number of other things. I know you know all this. I'm just saying this for people that don't know as much. Over time, that was reduced to nothing but a pediatric center with a We Care outlet, and we've been working with the health department to try to figure out a way to get this to be a robust facility again. I think you know all this. Mm-hmm. And we all have met with you and with Victor Hart and with Freddie Wolfhawk and a number of other people that you've had there. We're trying to listen to you. So, because you're right, we don't want to tell you what you need. We want to help support what you need and what your community will support. So I thought we were along the road to doing that. Listening to you tonight, I'd say that we've offended you in some way. And I don't quite know how we did that.
Could I just mention something?
Yes.
We were at a meeting. I was with you this morning with the big collaborative group.
Yes.
We met at the Human Services Building. And there were many, many organizations present with this collaborative effort with the village project that we are doing. This district has authorized through its funding up in the Gifford area. And if you remember from this morning's meeting, it was mentioned about, getting together with others in your community, in the Gifford community, other than you and Freddie and whatever, and just expanding it. And we did say we were going to start that process. Pat Nipper is on that, as she, you know, she's the coordinator. So we are moving forward on that. It's very exciting. And I just want the audience to know that we are with you on this. We understand. And so as of this morning, we are going to expand it to others in the Gifford community, so we can sit down and find out what it is you need. What do you need? And we will listen. So I know you sat right next to me, so you heard the same thing I did, right?
Yes.
Say yes, Tony.
Yes, I said yes.
Okay.
What I'm concerned, it's not about that. That's why I gave you your kudos. My concerns is when the assessment came out, it's very much flawed. And we were told, well, Tony and Freddie, our assessment says don't agree with what you told us. But once we delved into the assessment, you used 32967. That's my concern. Instead of the census tract that identifies an impoverished, under-resourced, vulnerable community called Gifford. The 32967 did not do that. My thing was, had we been involved in that decision on what you were going to use for the assessment, you would have had a truer number. You would have had a better representation of what was needed in the Gifford community. I said maybe it was by mistake, oversight, or whatever that this did not occur. Yeah. As far as the RPI, the RFI, as Freddie and I were talking, when information is disseminated into our community, see, you don't get it where we get it. Oh, the Gifford Clinic's gonna close. It's not any good. The people running it, there's a lot of dirt being spewed in our community in reference to the Gifford community. That's why when we say the RPI and the RFI, whichever, we need to have our community, because misinformation and disinformation in a community such as mine can be very bad. And it can have, he can verify, Reverend Ryan, who's the president of the Pastors Association, he came up to me, Tony, what is this about the health department closing? The health clinic closing. This is the stuff that is permeating into our community. This is what you don't get to know about. So I would be remiss if I did not bring it to you, not to attack, not to be perceived as being offended, but saying, I need you to understand there are different elements going on that you're not privy to. So it is not an attack, because I made it clear. I commend you for what you're doing. But also, listen a little closer and understand, we see, a friend of mine used the analogy of the giraffe and the tortoise. You are the giraffe. You see a pristine overview. I'm the tortoise. I see the underbelly. I see all of the bad stuff that you'll never get to see. So if the giraffe and the tortoise were to talk to each other openly and honestly, you'd have a better analysis of what's going on. That was my intent.
I know, Tony, and and I agree with you. And you and Freddie are emissaries for this group, because I know Alan Jones. We've all been at various meetings with the council. Alan Jones has been to just about every one. So you're an emissary to your people to let them know what you hear from us and what we're trying to do, because they trust you. And you did mention this. It's all about trust.
It is.
It's all about trust.
If I could say something, just also, going back to the assessment is a county-wide assessment. And I agree with you. It doesn't pick out maybe as much detail of specific areas as it should. 32962 isn't 32962. Just same as your, that 32967 is not. There's unique things within that, but it's a very high-level view. Hopefully most all of us understand that, okay? And I guarantee you, this group here wants to understand. We want to listen. We want to help. We don't want to come in and dictate. But we are responsible for the whole county as well. And there are issues around the whole county. There might be a few areas that maybe they don't have as many issues, okay? And we want to help address all of those. We had a discussion today in our meeting about how can we help now? How do we help more? And part of that is understanding, part of that is listening, and part of that is working together collaboratively to be able to come up with the answers. We have other responsibilities. You say, don't look at profit. We don't look at profit, but we do look at whose money we're using and how we're using it, and making sure that we're addressing the real needs in the community, okay? And that money goes to that. I have no problem, and nobody on this board has a problem using tax dollars to support the real needs in the community. And that's why we have to listen to it. But give us a little patience of your patience too, to be able to say sometimes we have to look at what's happening around the rest of the community too, and if we don't listen well, then you have a right to come back to us and tell us we don't listen well, okay? But we do want to work with you and address all of the needs that are in the community if we can. I don't know that we can address all of them, but we want to address the most important ones.
And I respect you for that, but like I said, my concern was the assessment and the RFI and the RFP, all of that. How it has damaged and infiltrated our community and caused unrest, concern. It's out there. You know, Freddie alluded to it in the meeting last night. It's real. It may not be real to you. My concern is that I've lived with it. I see the devastation that it does to my community. And I know that you're custodians of some money. I understand all that very well. But I'm biased. I'm biased about my community. And I'm speaking from that perspective that we are in a desperate mode. Mental health, all of the other things. And the only reason I use the assessment because it was portrayed as the Gifford assessment, that it was relative to Gifford, and 32967 would normally encompass Gifford, other than Vero Lake Estates and the east side of US 1. So those were my concerns. When I look and see that the African-American population is approximately 18%, like I said in my letter, I read over it and I read over it again today, and I don't just superficially do it because I have to represent not only myself, the NAACP, my community, and I'm not going to insult you or myself by coming up here wrong. So if it was perceived as a hate game, it's, to me, I'm informing you of our concerns and what the community is saying to me that won't talk to you. And so I have to be, and forgive me if I'm told that Tony Allen disrespected me, or I could use some other verbiage, and I don't relay it to Allen the right way, that's disingenuous. I have to let Allen know the real climate that he's dealing with, not a superficial climate or something that would make Allen feel good. I respect that man because he lived up to everything so far he has told me, but I still must be honest with him. And the only thing I ask you, you might not agree with me, you might not like how I propose it, one question, did he tell me the truth? And I will stake my life on telling you the truth. And I thank you for the opportunity. If there's no other questions, comments.
Well, just to be clear, all of us voted to set money aside to reinvigorate on a sustainable basis the Gifford Health Clinic.
Right.
And we want to have not only pediatric care and not only We Care services, but we want Healthy Start in there, which is there right now. We want adult primary care. We want behavioral or mental health counseling for both children and for adults. And we also want a substance abuse component. And every bit of that we got from talking to you.
Right.
These weren't our ideas, these are your ideas. So when you go back to the community, I can understand that change is going to happen, but the change is going to be good. I can understand they don't trust it's going to be good because it's not always, but we are dedicated, and we've already set money aside in our budget to fund the reinvigoration of the Gifford Health Clinic. And I'll let any of the trustees correct me. I think we're all in this together. And all we're trying to do is find out the best way to do it. So I hope that message will get out, and I hope you'll help us get it out. Speaking of that, at the meeting Monday or Tuesday, we talked about a meeting next Monday with 5 pillars. Is that going to happen?
Well, Freddie has put the word out, but you have a step better. you have a lot of them sitting in the room tonight.
Yeah.
You have the Pastors
5:30
Association,
Monday.
president, you have different people already in the room. I didn't come up here by myself.
I know you didn't.
And when the conversation was about people representing Gifford, these are the people who got the boots on the ground, who are not sitting in a corner. Freddie, Joe, and I, we interact with these people on a daily basis. You don't see them, but if we get in a bind, it's nothing for me to call Reverend Richardson or Reverend Pierce and Reverend Ryan and I. We done got to the point where we the Bopsy twins because he's also on my executive committee. So you got some of them, and a lot of them will be there on Monday.
Okay, that meeting will happen.
Oh, yeah, Freddie put that out earlier today. He put it out by email.
Okay, good. I just wanted to confirm it, because we talked about it, but you hadn't had a chance to talk to anybody.
Yeah,
So where will that be?
it would be at the Gifford Community Center.
Okay,
At the community center.
It's a community
Okay, 'cause I was
center.
going to go to the health department.
Gifford Community Center.
It's
We hold the
large.
5 pillars at 6 o'clock on the 3rd Monday of each month, and it's followed by the COPE meeting.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
We would like to make it a public meeting in the sense that, so we notify the public that it's being held, so that more than one district trustee
Well, it is a public
can
meeting.
go there.
Okay,
Okay, perfect.
excellent, because we need a public meeting to have more than two district trustees.
Yeah,
to be there.
because
I
we,
know.
we plan to be there. We plan to be there. And
Tracy, you were trying to.
I would like to say a couple of things.
Yes, ma'am.
If that's okay. I've had some great conversations with you, I think. And I appreciate your passion for your community. It has caused us to get excited and passionate about your community too. It's important to build relationships, and we're trying really hard to, and I'm going to get upset about this. We're trying really hard to build relationships with your community. And it's not easy because I feel like in some way there's a barrier. You're not letting us make relationships with some of the people in your community. I can make a relationship with you and with Freddie and some of the other people that I've gotten to meet and get to know. And I think that I have created a good relationship with you guys. We have spent a lot of time and effort specifically trying to figure out a way to make your community healthy and better, and we're listening to you. When you get information from people in your community that are telling you, are you closing the Gifford Health Center and those kinds of things, it is so important because they trust you to go back and tell them the hospital district is working hard. We're really trying to work hard to do a good job for you and to listen to you and to make sure that your needs are met. We are focusing more time, effort, and money on specifically your community, regardless of the assessment. The assessment was done for the community needs assessment, which encompasses the whole county. Regardless of that assessment, we are focusing a lot of time, effort, and money specifically on your community because we want it to be a healthy community with a quality of life that makes it someplace that you still enjoy and you feel good about. So please let us do that. Please, if there's any barriers that are standing between creating those relationships, because we're really trying, we want to be there, help us do that. Okay, get your community to build relationships with us. Not just you, because I think that we're doing a pretty good job with that, but other people in your community. Help them to understand that they can trust us, that we're really trying.
But that's why I brought,
Listening goes both ways, Tom.
yeah, no,
And
that's
hearing
why I
goes
brought
both
these people
ways.
here tonight. When Reverend Ryan, he can speak for himself, when he brought that to me, ask him what I told him. Man, that's a joke. But what I want you to know, there are people around you that are putting that information in our community.
Will you tell
Well,
us
you
who's
tell us
telling
who's
that?
doing that.
I'm just
Because
saying,
it's not us.
We will
it's
nip that
not
in the
you
bud.
all, but there are people who have the appearance, and sometimes perception is a lot of people's reality. Reverend Ryan tell you, Reverend Ryan, didn't I shut it down? The minute he brought it to me that he was told, I said, come on, man, that's a joke.
No, I'd like
I'm doing this, we're doing this, but I have to tell you what's going on.
No, and
It
I
would be disingenuous of me to pretend all's well and it's peachy Q. There's some bumps. Freddie and I kind of use the analogy, Ms. Dudan, as Fred and I said it earlier today. We get drugged through hell and sued for damages. It's not an easy walk for us either, because they may call us sellouts. We giving the community away. Y'all don't know the other half when we are trying to make this a progressive situation. Joe and I and Freddie and Julianne and some of us, we're the only people we can vent with. We be in a mess because of the perception that, oh, this a Trojan horse, they're not gonna do anything. We've been told lies before. You don't know the stories that come to us or the stuff that is embarked on us that we have to filter out in our community. The Bible in Hosea 4:6 says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. Knowledge they rejected. We deal with that on a daily basis.
Well, why don't you come to us and tell us what these problems are and what the people are saying? We have to have a relationship based on trust.
Mm-hmm.
This board and the boards before this board have done a great deal in the community. Our major budget expenditures are going into the Gifford community, even today. But we have to have a basis of trust between us. And, you know, some of the things you said tonight were really offensive. When you talk about profit, this board isn't here for a profit. We don't make a profit on giving money to take care of patients. Our job here is this board's goal is to produce a better healthcare system for the community, not just your community, the entire community. Because if one end of this community suffers, the whole community suffers. Disease doesn't stay in a small area. It moves, it rotates, it travels. And we have to understand that. And we have to work together. And that's why it's important that we have trust and more inclusive meetings together. And if people tell you things that are crazy on the street that are not true, just bring it to us and let's explain together what we're doing.
And I would tell you,
here.
Tony, that I hear all the time, why are you guys spending all your time on Gifford?
Mm-hmm.
What about South County? What about Fellsmere? What about the other places in the county? Why aren't you paying attention to us?
There's a lot
So
of needs in this
there's
community.
both ways that people
I'm
get.
saying that, and
hear
for
things.
Doc, for you, the profit thing was not about this board. I was saying medicine and healthcare cannot be dealt with in profit. That was not intended for this board. In no way, shape, form, or fashion was it intended. I'm saying as a matrix of how you get from point A to B with health disparities, all of that, it cannot be measured in dollars. That was not intended about you. See, that's why these conversations are beneficial. I respect a lot of the stuff that you all are doing.
But unfortunately, what you're talking about, I'll be straight with you right now, money does play a role.
Yes, because you the coffers.
Well, not only us, but let's say anybody here, if we were sick and we had certain problems, do you think we'd get the same treatment as somebody in Washington?
No.
Well, there's your disparity. You see, you're talking about it on a great level. It all boils down to power, money, and that's part of healthcare, whether we want to admit it or not. And I'm telling you that on this board and in this county, money is not the issue for us. We want to make sure that every person has access, as I said today, not to just healthcare, but quality healthcare.
True.
Because having access to healthcare doesn't mean you're going to get quality healthcare.
No. No way.
And I've seen it where you get miserable health care. Well, you can see the doctor 10 times a day, but he's not going to do anything for you. No, we have to sit down together. What are your real problems? What is the community's perception is the whole thing, as you pointed out. Not reality, it's what is perceived as reality. So perhaps you should have some of these folks come down and talk with us and say, well, what is your problem? And explain to us where they're getting the bad information from. Because this board has worked extremely hard to make sure that everybody in this county is taken care of.
Well, I do think we have that opportunity coming up Monday
Yes.
to begin that. And you know, you have to be commended for your passion. You are very passionate about your community, your people, and you stand up and you're accountable and you can be counted. And I appreciate that. Just know that I think this board right now is really in your corner, and we're trying to move ahead. It doesn't happen overnight. I like things to happen overnight. I'm an OR nurse. It has to happen. But it doesn't always happen overnight. But it will happen. I think we're making great progress.
Bottom
Thank you.
line is what Mr. Jones said. This board is committed to making the Gifford Health Clinic a full-service clinic that the folks in Gifford want to have, with the services that you want to have. What we are wrestling with is how we go about doing that and making sure that we do it right. So we're not rushing into something, we're not jumping into something, because we have people that also we have to respond to too. But please go back, send the message, we are committed.
But that's, Madam Chair, that's why I asked these people, so it don't have to be filtered through me. These are pastors of churches. They're not just preachers. Each one of them have a church. And they can disseminate the information, not through a filter, but they can disseminate it. As I stated earlier, my concerns was the assessment and the RFIs and that what the community was being told. And I thank Alan on Tuesday night, and Ms. Soriano, you remember, I used the analogy of a computer. If you want to destroy a computer, what do? You insert a virus. And Freddie piggybacked on it to say that some crazy stuff is going on, that our community are being told some untruths. And this is what we have to deal with, and this is what we have to try to bring. We interact, but our community, they are not going to come meet with you. As Freddie said in the meeting this morning, somebody was asking, when we meet these young men, can we do that? Oh, no, they are not. And Alan, you got your PhD with the lady in Wabassa when you asked her a question and she went cold on you like you didn't even exist. So this is what we are trying to be the intermediaries to bring it to the table so that you'll understand, and as we all move forward, we will break down barriers. And and like I say, I respect what you're doing, I understand what you're doing, but those issues came up on the assessment and where we were going with the health department, and I had to say something.
If I could interrupt you on that. The assessment, and I want to clarify something about the assessment. That assessment was done for purposes of the hospital and the Treasure Coast Community Health. They have a requirement to do a comprehensive needs assessment for their licensing. Am I saying this correctly? And
Certification for
the certification, exactly. So when it was done all areas in the community, it was done the same. The zip codes and how they structured this assessment, they did not break down any other areas. So this was not something that was picked apart. It was not biased at all. So I don't know where you got your information that's incorrect. Those numbers are correct for the zip code. We did not go in and break down any other zip codes, and nor will we, because the fact it costs a lot of money. Now, if you wanted to participate and have it broken down and deciphered differently, obviously we would have required more funding to do something like that. That wasn't part of it.
And we did, for clarification, we did invite everyone
Yes,
to
we
participate.
did.
I mean, we
And the
invited the health
did say they
department,
did not
and
want
they
to be
didn't
part
need
of
to
it.
do it this year, they're gonna
Right?
do it next year. And so perhaps that needs assessment that's done next year, when you do that, will break down further into census tracts, so that we can get that better information all around our county, which will be inclusive of Gifford's census tract as well. So we did invite other organizations to involve, who would then call in people from their organizations to give us advice about how we should look at things, how we should slice and dice data, those kinds of things. So, there were other invitations for other involvement in that needs assessment, but it is just a very small piece. And so I understand, I hear what you're saying, we hear what you're saying, that it is one tool, one piece of information for us to use. The more valuable information for us to use is the information we want to drag out of the consumers, the users of all of these organizations, all of the services that the district funds for this community, for certain areas and certain health issues. So we're gonna keep up our work
And my
with
last
you,
thing is,
with you.
I was proud this morning with the VNA when they did a boots in the ground assessment and were coming up, how people was giving this, I don't trust, I give up. These are the things that we know are going on, and it was just, I was with cold chills listening to their assessment
Right. and
because they were boots on the ground.
And they're sharing that, and we are a part of that. We are a part of that.
Yeah,
We
I know.
funded that effort, so,
I'm
you know,
aware
we're
of
helping them.
I know that because I've been at the table.
Right.
But I was saying, when they did that assessment, it was music to my ears. Because it was a true validation of the problems associated in under-resourced, vulnerable communities that don't normally get to the table. So I
Well,
just
Tony,
wanted
I
to-
hope you will help us also do those kind of assessments in South County and some of the other areas too.
Well, when you called on me, I responded quickly.
You did.
I don't get paid for this.
Neither do I.
Neither do we.
I know, this is hard work.
Neither do we.
It's hard work. The
this is
minute you
hard
showed
work.
me, I responded to you and gave you some access to
Yep.
people that you'd have never known about.
You're exactly right, and we're
So
gonna follow up
I'm
on
still gonna do that, but I want you to understand, I'm gonna try to bring truth to the table. And if it's skewed or I don't get the full concept of it, I listen. But I still have to let you know what my community is saying.
Thank you, we
Okay.
appreciate it.
Thank you
And I
for
thank
bringing
Comments.
the,
Thank you, Tony.
Tony, thank you
there
for
any
bringing the
other public-
pastors with you, and we'll see you on Monday.
Is there any other public comment? Yes.
Oh, more trouble. No, he's not trouble.
Freddie Wolf, 4590 57th Avenue. I just want to quickly say I see great progress that we're making because of the communication that's taking place. There are several venues around the county now where we can actually go into those venues and hear the same message you just heard in another meeting, that you heard in another meeting, which is good, which means that we're sharing. And as Tony said, his main objective tonight was not to harass or upset anyone, but to call to our attention, when they call that assessment a Gifford assessment, it shouldn't be called Gifford assessment.
Don't know who called it
Yeah,
that.
well,
That's a problem.
that's the information was getting out. So when he says the Gifford assessment, so I don't think he was trying to say that you guys did anything wrong, but it's saying what the perception in the community is. But I must say, as the council chair for the Gifford Health Center, I'm there to make sure that our community receives the most highest quality service available, which is in line with what I'm hearing you guys say. So with two are going down the road together, we shouldn't have any struggle making it down that road. We have made some progress. I immediately, after I heard about the RFI, I immediately put out an email. That was yesterday or day before yesterday. I sent out an email to about 20 individuals asking them to spread the word that on Monday, the third Monday and the 19th at 6 o'clock at the Gifford Community Center, that particular document will be discussed more in detail. So I knew it was important that we do that. So Alan is there. Please, you guys, it's a public meeting, publicized as such, so there won't be any type of sunshine law violation and all that good stuff. So thank you so much for what you've done. I'm looking at the end result, that the Gifford Health Center will be restored back to the Stella organization, the Stella Health Department that it once was. And what Mr. Victor Hart, who sat here tonight, I know it got a little long for him and had to move, but his heart was that this particular center be a place where people can find the health care that they deserve. So thank you so much for tonight.
Thank you, Freddie. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, may I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Victor Hart, thank you for coming.
Okay.
God bless you.
Adjourn.
God bless you.